All right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'm Glenn Weinstein. I'm the CEO here at Cloudsmith, and I'm joined by Patty Carey, a principal engineer here at Cloudsmith. And Patty and I are going to guide us through a short discussion on policy management, which is the key to unlocking a secure software supply chain. You may know a little bit about Cloudsmith. Cloudsmith is the world's leading cloud-based artifact management platform for managing software binaries. And we believe that one of the most important missions that our platform can be used for by customers is to manage and secure their software supply chain. And specifically, what we're here to talk about today is a preview of an announcement that we'll be making next week at KubeCon North America in Salt Lake City, which is announcing our new policy management engine that we believe is one of the real keys to using Cloudsmith for purposes of securing your software supply chain. So Patty, we have a lot to cover. I think we should get right into it.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the first kind of area I want to talk us through, and if you read the webinar invitation, we promised to answer a few questions in this webinar. I want to walk through those questions together with you, Patty, and talk about why we believe at Cloudsmith that securing the software supply chain is a team effort. Security, as it relates to software, is a complex topic, and security professionals will tell you that security is not a Boolean, it's not a yes or no question, it's a matter of degree. It's a matter of balancing risk and benefits. And so the first three questions I kind of want to chat through with you, Patty, is to understand why artifact management is so important to securing your software supply chain and what kind of role your artifact management platform can play. And the first question that we teed up when we invited folks to this webinar was comparing the role of the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, in a typical large organization with lots of software development teams, with the role of the Chief Technology Officer or the Head of Engineering to reduce risk and making the software that they build secure. Patty, in your experience, does the CISO play much of a role, or does the CTO or the Head of Engineering own security in the software supply chain?
I think security is a team sport, right? Like, engineering can't solve security on their own, nor can a security team. You know, we need to work together as teams, as organizations, to provide security and, you know, meet our compliance requirements across the business. You know, engineers might be the ones that write the code. Security probably define policies and requirements. So, you know, the more we can work together, the more secure our systems are going to be.
That makes sense, Patty. So we're going to have meetings at KubeCon at our booth and by schedule with lots of CISOs and lots of people that are in engineering organizations. So I'd like to take a moment now and just ask our first poll question, which is to ask whether you'll be attending KubeCon next week in Salt Lake City. So have a look at that, and we will compile the results later. All right, Mary, I'm going to let that question go. We don't need to show the answers just yet, maybe show them a little bit later, but let's gather that question and then kind of move on to our second question, which I want to discuss with you, Patty, which is controlling the flow of open source software in particular into an organization. We know that a lot of software that's built today depends very heavily on open source libraries and packages and containers and other things. How does a software development organization control the flow of open source into developer pipelines?
Well, open source software can come from any number of upstream registries with PyPI or npm.js, and so it's really important that teams have a single location from which they can pull almost a choke point, if you will, through which everything flows, whether to developer machines or into production systems. And that single point allows you to provide, you know, lots of visibility on what's flowing through the system, you know, good observability for what developers are using, what your systems are running. And it also gives you a point at which to apply policies and controls around that software that you're pulling in.
Okay, so basically to have a proxy layer that sits in between developers and public registries like npm.js or Maven Central or Docker Hub, things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, just kind of moving to the third question that we promised to answer in this webinar is, If we're going to start adding security into the software supply chain, developers' first reaction to anything related to security is generally, that's going to slow me down. So is there a way that we can give developers the tools that they need to build software securely, but still build it faster?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this constant tension between security and shipping faster, right? And organizations want to find the sweet spot for them depending on their requirements. So a tool like Cloudsmith can provide that developer experience and the speed that developers know and are accustomed to, but also give the security folks the control that they need. And by shifting as much of that responsibility left as possible, when we have issues, when we have security issues, they happen early at development time rather than waiting until something's about to go to production and it takes an extra week to remediate than if it had just happened and someone made a different choice a week ago.
Great point. Okay, so by allowing developers to pick better packages in the first place, we actually are helping them build software faster.
Yeah.
Okay, so Patty, I asked you to join me on this webinar because you're not just a principal engineer at Cloudsmith, but you're also the principal architect behind Policy as Code and this new initiative to build a next generation policy management engine for Cloudsmith. So in that spirit, I don't feel bad at all in putting you on the spot to answer some questions about Policy as Code. So Policy as Code broadly is a way to build security policies into your artifact management platform that are tailored to your organization's specific security and compliance standards. So there's a couple of important elements of Policy as Code. And the first is this thing we internally call OPA. It stands for Open Policy Engine or Open Policy Agent. What is OPA all about, Patty? And is it important to Cloudsmith?
Yeah, absolutely. So our new enterprise policy manager is built almost entirely on OPA. And what OPA is, it's a general purpose policy engine. Teams may already be familiar with it if they control policies within their Kubernetes clusters or control what their Terraform can do. So it's a really flexible open source tool that people are already familiar with. So we want to give them control, but we also want to meet developers where they are. We don't want to overload people with new tools and new concepts. And we want to tap into the rich ecosystem that exists out there, so people can go and read docs, read examples written by other people. And so building on top of a de facto standard like OPA is a no-brainer for us.
Interesting. Okay, so we didn't just build our own policy engine; we built on top of something the industry's already familiar with.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so OPA is a runtime, I suppose, or an engine, and it another really important part of building an OPA-based policy management engine is the language called Rego. So, what exactly is Rego, and what role does that play?
So, Rego's the programming language, for want of a better term, that OPA uses. It's a really flexible language that's designed to evaluate policies and make decisions. So it's absolutely perfect for this use case. It's maybe slightly different, a slightly different kind of language than a lot of developers are used to, but it's really flexible and allows people to make the decisions that they need to make in the way that they want to make them. So no matter how simple or complex your policy needs are, you can write a Rego policy to meet them.
Oh, and again, like multiple tools, not just Cloudsmith would use Rego, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next element of Policy as Code is making data available to your Rego scripts. So, like, how does that work? Does Rego have access to artifact data from Cloudsmith repositories?
It does, yes. So, so this is the part where I guess Cloudsmith really adds value here. So, an artifact management platform sits at the center of your software delivery pipeline, really. Code goes in, artifacts go in, and they get shipped to production or to developer machines. And as a result, we know a lot about the artifacts that flow through our system. We know we parse them to extract metadata. We pull in different metadata from different sources, package quality data, security data, lots of different things. So we gather that up over the course of our customers' usage. And then we can provide that to the policy engine at the right time to make the right decision. So if you want to make a decision based on some little niche piece of metadata, whether it's created in the wider ecosystem or something you've added yourself, we want to enable you to do that. And
okay.
it's all about the data, really. I mean, I'm a huge OPA fanboy, and it's great, but the the real the real benefit here is the data that we can bring along to combine with OPA to make the policy decisions possible.
Okay, so using OpenRego, you can traverse artifact data that's surfaced by Cloudsmith. And then the last bit of policy code that makes it powerful are the decision logs. So what role do decision logs play in the Cloudsmith policy engine, or really any policy as code?
Decision logs are effectively a type of audit log. Every time we make a decision or based on one of your policies, we record a decision log, and we make that available over API or by exporting that to your S3 bucket or to Azure storage.
Okay.
And so that means that every decision that's made in an automated way in our system is completely auditable and debuggable. You can go in and see exactly what the input data was, what the policy was, what decision it made, and what the result was of that in the system. Did a package get quarantined? Did it get blocked? Did we reject a package? And so if you have like really strict compliance needs, perhaps you're in a regulated industry, you will have a full record of everything that's ever happened throughout the life cycle of your artifacts as they flow through our system.
Sounds very powerful. All right, so we've talked a lot about what policy as code is and how it works. Now I want to talk a little bit about the motivation for it. The fact of the matter is that a lot of tools today, including artifact management platforms, are built on a fairly simplistic view of how to handle vulnerabilities that are discovered in artifacts. So you may have a security scanning solution that looks at the different packages that are going into your build pipeline and flags some of them as having vulnerabilities, which are called CVEs. But the tricky part is that it's not as simple as, well, if anything has a higher critical CVE, just quarantine it. We have found that our customers need more sophisticated and more subtle methods of prioritizing vulnerabilities. So I wanted to share one potential framework for thinking about how to prioritize vulnerabilities. And it's a three-part kind of way of thinking about it. First of all, you have the relatively objective baseline scores that every publicly published CVE has, which are a CVSS, that's the CVE scoring system, and an EPSS, that's the exploit prediction scoring system of how likely that CVE is to be exploited in the wild. Those are kind of entering arguments, and they're numbers that the whole community will share. But you may want to combine that knowledge, and what a developer will do intuitively in their head when they're deciding if a CVE is serious or not, will to be to think about the exploitability of that CVE. Not all CVEs are created equal. Some of them may not have any real-world exploits, so the exploit status will factor into your thinking. The kinds of threats that are presented by that CVE are certainly not all equal. And whether there's even a fix or an alternative to that CVE, the availability of patches or other kind of remediations may factor into whether you decide, let's say, to block that package from use in your production systems or not. The third kind of general area that we talk about is specifics to your environment, very bespoke stuff here. You may want to block a particular CVE in one service because it's a very critical service and not worry about blocking it in a different service. So they're criticality of the service to your environment. Similarly, you may have different opinions based on the environment type, a deployment or a production system versus a staging system versus development systems, even things like your particular compliance requirements, your data sensitivity. So a lot of custom stuff goes into how you want to treat vulnerabilities that a scanner basically scans and flags. And that's the essence of why you would want a more sophisticated policy engine rather than just kind of like a light switch that says, block all things that have CVEs. So given the ability to have a really powerful policy management engine, Patty, I'd love to talk to you about what we've built at Cloudsmith and why we think it's an effective platform for policy management. So there's a couple of really key components of an effective policy management platform that give you OPA, give you Rego, et cetera. Could you walk us through these? I think the first that we're going to actually take a quick look at after we finish this slide is a visual policy builder, right? You don't have to write code.
Yeah, exactly. Not all of our customers are engineers, and not all of them want to learn the Rego language. So we think it's really important that you can go click a few buttons in the UI, drag some conditions and some outcomes and actions onto a graph, and see visually what your policy is going to do and how it's going to do it. And so that's a really simple on-ramp to building the kinds of policies that your organization might need.
Hey, by the way, even if you are an engineer, you don't want to have to write code every single time if it's for a basic use case. But you can write code, right? So policy as code is really important to escape hatch if you need to create arbitrary policies.
Yeah, exactly. A visual policy builder, no matter how flexible it is probably there are always going to be edge cases. There are always going to be things that you want to do that we haven't considered yet. And the policy as code escape hatch gives you a really powerful way to do that.
That's very cool. All right. You touched on this a little bit when we were talking about the components of a policy as code, but the incorporation of third-party metadata is really important here, right? It's not just the data that Cloudsmith has surfaced for you. You get to combine a lot of sources of metadata into your policies.
Yeah, exactly. So everything from just package quality data, things like OpenSSF scorecards. You can lean on the community who have already categorized and compiled a lot of metadata, and so we want to make all that available to you and for use in your policies as well.
Got it. So you can even incorporate like third-party scanners, maybe multiple scanners, maybe data that your own cybersecurity team is coming up with. That seems like you're basically taking developer intuition and codifying it and putting it into policies. And then finally, with a really great policy management engine, we've talked internally about this notion of vulnerabilities as first-class objects. Artifact management platforms tend to think of the artifacts, the packages, as the first-class object. I want a list of all my packages and which ones have vulnerabilities. But we've kind of flipped that around, right? We've inverted it and we've made vulnerabilities the first-class object. What does that mean?
So really what that means is that the vulnerability data is front and center in the policy engine. So we feed all of that in, whether it comes from one scanner or multiple, and we make that available for you to make decisions on. Whether you've got a single Python package, package A at version 1, or you've got a Docker container that contains 1,000 packages, it shouldn't matter. The vulnerabilities still apply, just at slightly different levels.
That's a very cool concept, and I think our users are going to be a little blown away by this when they first see it in the release that will be coming out after KubeCon. So can we take a look at this product now, Patty? I took the liberty of snapping a bunch of screenshots just because we want to fly through this kind of quickly. But let's have a look at Cloudsmith's Enterprise Policy Management Engine in action. And I want to start with just what policies look like. Can you talk us through what we're looking at here?
This is just a straightforward list view. You can see we've got 4 policies here. They can be tagged differently if you want to group them in certain ways. Maybe some of your policies are vulnerability policies. Some of them target licensing requirements. Tags are just a nice free-form way for you to group and sort those.
Okay, so where maybe in the past you would have had different policy types that were kind of recognized by the platform, now we're saying, all policies there's a certain generic quality to policies, and you can make any type of policy you want to apply to anything you want.
Yeah, exactly. It could be a vulnerability policy, a license policy. It could be both.
Yeah, that's really powerful concept. All right, so then we give customers and users the ability to create their own policies, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is the create new policy screen, where it's the first thing users will see when they go into the web application to create that policy. So, enter name, description, usual stuff.
Yeah, it's usual stuff, but I'm noticing something pretty cool, which is it's not just create your own policies, but there's this concept of templates and even managed policies. What's a managed policy?
So a managed policy is one that's maintained by Cloudsmith and our team. So maybe there's a list of specific vulnerabilities that are particularly high impact, and we have a team that goes through and constantly keeps that up to date and make sure that your team remains safe.
I think when Log4j came out, Cloudsmith kind of did a one-off sort of managed policy for that. But this is genericizing that concept, right? That Cloudsmith may just have some prescriptions for you.
Exactly. Yeah, we expect there to be a large library of these things in the future.
That's amazing. All right, so we talked about a visual policy builder. Is this what it looks like?
This is exactly it. So you can see here on the right-hand side, we have several conditions that can be combined in arbitrary ways with simple Boolean logic, ands or ors. And if a policy matches, you can take a number of actions. You can see here quarantine, and I think the one just off the screen is notify. So you can send notifications to your other systems or to your people, but whatever you prefer.
Gotcha. So, I mean, this is starting to border on a workflow engine. Like you just take in a bunch of metadata, you set conditions, and then you trigger actions.
There's a lot of commonality here, yeah, for sure. The core policy engine is the thing that matches the conditions, and everything around it is, I guess, the Cloudsmith special sauce.
Okay, now I bet these are hard to write. So is there a way to test these without like blowing up your artifact repos?
Totally. So what we've built is a new test policy feature. It allows you to build a policy either in the editor here or in your IDE, and then you can test that against the live packages in your system to see what effect that would have before you actually make it live. So if you have 1,000 packages and you want to write a new policy, you might hit test policy and say, oh, this matches everything. It wasn't supposed to match everything. And adjust and iterate before you actually make something live, and maybe accidentally quarantine your entire repository. That wouldn't be good.
This sounds like a very developer-friendly kind of a developer experience thing. That's a great idea. And I'm noticing we use the standard Cloudsmith package query language there. This is a pretty simplistic one. It's just saying, act on my staging repo. But the reality is those strings can get pretty sophisticated too, right?
They can do, yeah. So this is just a little extra sprinkle of for developer experience.
Yeah,
we want to make sure you're applying your policies to the right packages in the right repositories.
Right. That's really where the fact that Cloudsmith is essentially a pretty powerful search engine on millions of packages really comes in handy. Okay, so you have told us lots in this presentation about policy as code, but we haven't seen any policy as code. So this is a visually built policy. Is there an edit code button?
Yeah, so you can see up in the top right there, we have a little toggle between policy builder and policy code. So if you find the policy builder isn't enough, you can drop down into the editor. You can edit it in the browser. Equally, you could edit it in your IDE and use our Terraform provider or our APIs to post that to your system if you want to do your policy as code in a Git repository.
That's amazing. And does this start out, if you built one visually and then you drop down to code, does it kind of like precede your code with what was in your visual?
Absolutely, yes. So the policy builder effectively generates a Regal policy under the hood. So when you want to edit the code, you'll see exactly what you've built.
Okay, so in a way, it's almost teaching you Rego, and it's you can get like 80% of the way there in visual, and then just kind of finish it off with some lines of code.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's very developer friendly. All right, that's very cool, Patty. Hopefully in a future session we'll just do a live demo. But let's get serious about software supply chain security. We've talked about software supply chain security kind of synonymous with the Cloudsmith artifact management platform. But what's the difference, I guess, between software supply chain security and just managing your software supply chain? How would you articulate that?
I think software security is just one part of software supply chain management. The security data is a very important part of that, but most organizations have requirements and policies that go well beyond just vulnerabilities. They maybe don't want to allow copyleft licenses, or they don't want to allow packages written by certain authors. And a comprehensive policy management solution allows you to express all of that.
That's a great point. Now, listen, sometimes there really are bad people, right? There are malicious actors out there. And can Cloudsmith be used effectively to protect organizations from attacks?
Absolutely. So everything we've just talked about allows you to make the decisions that you need to make. Whether it's platform, security, engineering teams making those decisions, they can all do that in one place with Cloudsmith.
That's pretty great. And then finally, we said this at the very beginning, developers are going to resist a platform that doesn't seem like it's increasing their velocity or just basically getting in their way. I can kind of answer this last question here. I think we have shown a way that developers can be in control and still actually increase their velocity by being able to make better package choices earlier on in the development process.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Patty. Yeah. So just to kind of close out the thoughts here, basically what we're saying is that a really good policy management system can help secure your software supply chain. It's going to safeguard your organization from compromised packages, prevent tampering, improve integrity, secure your IP. Basically, the message here is go from good enough, safe enough, yeah, there's no CVEs or there's only a few, to really as resilient as you can possibly get with the help of your cybersecurity team, and give your CISO a role in managing developer artifact repos. And then finally, Patty, you demonstrated amply here that we're creating an observable and verifiable set of policies across the organization. It's all powered by Cloudsmith's APIs. So that's a lot to take in. It's kind of abstract until you make it real. And so what we want to say on this webinar is to make an offer. If you would like a software supply chain checkup from Cloudsmith, we will give you a place to click. We would want to come either visit you at KubeCon or just give you a 30-minute one-on-one master class in advanced artifact management strategies for DevOps and platform teams. Basically, let's get into it with your specific scenario. What are your environmental requirements? Remember that slide I showed about how every organization's tolerance for risk and risk benefit is different. So we'll get into that with you. If you'd like to sign up for that, just click that sign up button. We will be at KubeCon next Tuesday through Friday in Salt Lake City. So if you're going to be attending KubeCon, then please sign up and we will block out time for you. I know how these conferences get. It gets very crowded and packed at the end, at the kind of like at the booth. So we'll make some time for you if you want to sign up in advance. That would be great. So finally, we did leave a couple of minutes for questions, just a few minutes actually. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them into the chat or the Q&A or whatever you see on the right side of your screen there, and we will knock them down. But in the meantime, while we talk about kind of see if there's any questions, Patty, I wanted to talk about KubeCon a little bit. We have some really important announcements coming at KubeCon, including the announcement of the availability of the enterprise policy management editor in Cloudsmith. That'll be available to preview customers next week, or how does that work?
Yeah, it'll be available in early access. So
early access. Yeah. Okay. And do we have customers that have started to write policies using our policies code or using our policy builder?
We do. We have a couple of very early customers who've been very patient with us as we've built up this functionality, and so they're already starting to see the benefit of this in action.
This is a pretty significant new feature for Cloudsmith and really for any artifact management platform, isn't it?
It really is. It's a game changer for us.
Yeah, we talked about this. I remember when this was a roadmap item, kind of a twinkle in my eye, and now it's it went from that to a proof of concept, and now it's productionized features in Cloudsmith. It's very exciting. In addition to that, we will be showcasing our new user interface in Salt Lake City at KubeCon, and we'll also be talking about our new broadcasts feature and our OCI container standard compliance. So we'll take a look at that. Before we close out, Patty, we chose to build on OPA. Were there alternatives that we considered?
Yeah, so we did consider other offerings, things like OpenFGA, and I know AWS have the Cedar language. Mm-hmm. They're all good. They're all capable. OPA to us felt like it fit our use case really well. It fit the needs of our customers. We validated with a whole bunch of people with their exact requirements. Yeah. And so OPA gives us a really nice interface to build on top of in a way that some of the others just didn't provide quite enough for us to build a platform on top of it, really.
Okay, so we believe OPA has legs to be a permanent part of the Cloudsmith platform.
We do, yeah.
All right, that's very exciting. Patty, I want to give you a huge thank you as one of our founding principal engineers here in Cloudsmith and the real kind of big brain behind implementing the Enterprise Policy Manager in Cloudsmith. Thanks a lot for your time and answering all my silly questions.
Thanks, Glenn.
So that does it for today's webinar. We'll get you out of here on time. Again, one last call to see you in Salt Lake City. We will be at KubeCon. We'll be in a big old booth. It will be easy to find. And I hope to meet many of you in Salt Lake City or down the road. Thank you for your time today. Again, Glenn Weinstein here, CEO at Cloudsmith. Happy policy managing. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.